Welcome back to the Ben Mulrooney Show, and it's Friday, which means we've got to take a look back at the biggest political stories of the week, and we do so with a great political panel. Please welcome back to the show Brad Lavigne, President of Counsel PA, NDP Strategist. Welcome, Brad. Say hi to Warren Kinsella, former Special Advisor to Jean Chretien and CEO of the Daisy Group, still with his tan, clearly, from his time in Israel. Great to see you, my friend.
No, it's high blood pressure. That's what it is.
And Kate Harrison, Vice Chair at Summa Strategist. To all three of you, I say happy Friday.
Happy Friday. No tan here in Ottawa.
No
tan.
Well, not with the weather we've been having anywhere around here. My goodness, I don't think spring's coming for a while now. All right, let's break down what I think is going to continue to be one of the biggest stories is Canada's relationship with Israel and all the knock-on effects. Let's listen to Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu calling out Mark Carney and other leaders.
I say to President Macron, Prime Minister Carney, and Prime Minister Starmer, when mass murderers, rapists, baby killers, and kidnappers thank you, you're on the wrong side of justice. You're on the wrong side of humanity. And you're on the wrong side of history. Now, these leaders may think that they're advancing peace. They're not. They're emboldening Hamas to continue fighting forever. And they give them hope to establish a second Palestinian state, from which Hamas will again seek to destroy the Jewish state.
All right. So, listen, is it fair, and I'm going to start with you, Warren, because you were just there. Is it fair to connect the dots between the position that Canada took and the shooting in Washington? Is it fair, or is it, we'll leave it at that. Is it fair?
Well, let's put it this way. So I was in Israel for a few weeks and got back just a few days ago. The government of Benjamin Netanyahu is really unpopular in Israel. The war is unpopular in Israel. The focus there is to get the hostages home and to get the war over. Yeah. So, there's no question about that. The statement by Carney and Keir, Starmer, and Macron was a strong statement. I think it caught the Netanyahu government off guard and knocked them off balance. I think having Netanyahu out there as your spokesperson for Israel is just not a good idea. He's very unpopular in the West. And I personally think associating those three leaders with Hamas is not helpful. Yeah. At the end of the day, Israel needs the West to continue to support it. So, to me, it's symptomatic of the overall problem with the Carney government. I'm writing about this for Postmedia this weekend. I can't get a clear sense of where they are on key issues, having a budget, energy, Israel, our relationship with the United States. It's messy, and this is another example that they need to clean it up.
Kate, the irony is, prior to October 7th, it looked like forces were aligning to turf Benjamin Netanyahu with his the changes unilateral changes he was trying to bring to the Israeli Supreme Court. I mean, it really looked like his days were numbered. Hamas ensured that he would stay in power for years after that. And so, but I keep going back to him saying they've been emboldened. We've got this murder on the streets of Washington, people saying free Palestine. I heard some video of protesters here in the city of Toronto, and I'm looking at it through this lens that, are our leaders, when they are making what I think are hot takes and poor takes and lack of, missing the nuance of the situation, is it giving cover to people who really don't need that cover? And when they have that cover, they can go to those extreme lengths.
Two things are true in this scenario. Number one, politicians are not responsible for the actions of madmen. That is just as true in this case as it was when, Liberal MPs were accusing, right-winger conservatives of violence being linked to Pierre Poilievre sometime last spring. They are not responsible for that, for the actions of terrorists. However, our politicians' lack of courage does contribute to a climate and an environment where people do feel emboldened to take extreme action. And I would point to the lack of enforcement of laws we have. Put aside, the discussion around bubble laws at the municipal level, but we're not even enforcing laws that we have. We're not providing clarity of conviction on these matters. That was a problem with the Trudeau government. It looks to be a problem for the Carney government. From what I gather, that statement that he signed on to, which was praised by Hamas, was not necessarily run through the town before he signed on to it. So this is going to continue to be a problem unless the government stands on this issue one way or another. They're going to try to have their cake and eat it too. It didn't work for the last government. I doubt it will work for this one. But the lack of that conviction and that courage and those words, we cannot equate that to the violence and the terrorism that we see south of the border or some of the activities here.
Brad, we just had Warren say that he doesn't know where this government stands on a number of key files. Kate said they want to have their cake and eat it too. Is that how you see it, that this is a government that is going to do its best to be as opaque as possible for as long as possible?
Well, I think the short answer is probably, because that's what Liberals do best. I think that the last handful of years were particularly troubling for the Liberal Party of Canada. And of course, Warren, with his years of involvement, would know this very, very well. For years, I think the Liberal Party was seen as a party that was behind Israel and I think by and large would compete with the Conservative Party and had, I think, especially a handful of years ago, enjoyed a lot of the support of the Jewish Canadian diaspora. I think that under Trudeau, I think that they lost a lot of that. I think a lot of the Jewish community, particularly in the Greater Toronto area, moved over to the Conservative Party. Now we'll see what Mr. Carney wants to see what he wants to do in terms of putting his coalition together. And I think that a lot of that, particularly after October 7th, was challenging inside the Liberal caucus of the elected members of Parliament before the last election. So we'll see where he wants to go. As for giving aid to Hamas, I think that, if you take a look at that, obviously Donald Trump is a huge Netanyahu supporter, huge supporter of Israel, and yet this horrible atrocity in Washington was only blocks away from the White House. So you can't say that whether it's the Prime Minister of UK or Canada and the leaders of France are supporting Hamas, yet this horrible atrocity took place blocks away from Donald Trump's residence. So I don't think that it's serving the interest of peace in the Middle East to call out Carney, Starmer, and Macron.
So I want to take a moment and talk about this new bubble bylaw in the city of Toronto. And for those who are listening who are unaware of it, it's a bylaw that just got passed. It offers protections to certain key public locations like schools and places of worship. There are about 3,000 locations that would fall under the purview of this bylaw, and it is not specific to the Jewish faith. It's churches, it's mosques, it's synagogues, and schools, and the like. But my question, Kate, I'll start with you. I think a lot of us were surprised that it got beefed up, that the 20 meter bubble was extended to 50 and so on. There's a few places. So it actually got improved from the watered down version that it was before. Very, very quickly. It's sort of a pivot from my first question. If that violence hadn't happened on the streets of Washington, do you think we would have seen a beefing up the way we did of this bylaw?
I'm sure that recent events resulted in that law being augmented. I do come back to, we do have existing laws that could be enforced. I generally am supportive of making sure they're safe spaces. But passing new laws when the current ones aren't being enforced properly is not going to fix this problem.
Well, having bubble zones around places of worship, and not just Jewish ones, in Quebec City, we all saw, how critically important, like, this could have been on that terrible occasion when so many Muslims of prayer lost their lives. This is something that's supported by most religious communities, and it's something that already exists in respect of abortion clinics and health providers. So, this was an easy thing to do, but of course, typically, Toronto Council turned it into a torture chamber. But Brad, went on for hours.
Warren, we're going to leave it there. I'm going to pick you up after the break. Don't go anywhere. More with our panel. Welcome back to the Ben Mulroney Show, and welcome back to This Week in Politics, and welcome back to Brad Lavigne, Warren Kinsella, and Kate Harrison. Guys, I want to jump right back in, and I want to look forward to Kananaskis, Alberta for the G7 summit. This will be Mark Carney's first as the host prime minister, and it's also Donald Trump's return to the world of multilateralism. And I think it's going to be a very interesting backdrop, given the fact of what he essentially tweeted today, disparaging in the most inaccurate and inaccurate terms the European Union, which he said, which was formed for the primary purpose of taking advantage of the United States on trade. And now he's suggesting a massive trade deficit. He's recommending a straight 50% tariff on the European Union starting on June 1st, so 2 weeks before the summit. Warren, you know, you worked with a prime minister who attended a great many of these summits. Talk to me about, I mean, who's walking into a buzzsaw here?
Well, actually, none of them are, because Chretien, when I worked for him, I said to him, because I'm from Alberta, as you know, Ben, and like, why just stick it in Kananaskis? And he said, well, if any protesters try and get in there, they're going to get eaten by bears. So, like, it's pretty isolated. Yeah. So it's going to be very difficult for any of the many protesters who I think would like to target Mr. Trump from showing up. You know, it's if you're in the Secret Service or the RCMP Protective Service, it's a dream scenario for you because it's the best location for something like this.
Kate, I'm going to jump on and ask you, what do you think this is? He just keeps lobbing bombs, doesn't he? Just when you think everyone is rowing in the same direction and we might be able to have a little peace in the valley, something like this pops up.
Yeah, that's a feature, not a bug of Trump's negotiation style, right? Yeah. So, you know, he starts at 50% today in the lead into the G7, you know, then we end up somewhere around 15 and it still looks like the U.S. has secured something. He always goes to the extreme and then walks it back a little bit. I think where there's going to be tension around the G7 table, Ben, there might be some, of course, with European leaders, but how that interaction goes with Vladimir Zelensky, because he will be there. Canada, I think, will have some positive things to say about support for Ukraine around that meeting. We know that the Trump administration has a very different view on the role that they should continue to play in the Ukrainian-Russian conflict. So I think that might be an opportunity for sparks to fly. It might be the first chance that Trump and Zelensky have being back in the same room together. So I think that that's where we could see some tension around the G7 table, how Canada navigates the Ukrainian conflict and the support that we provide there, vice where we know Americans want to go, which is stepping back from support in that conflict.
Brad, give me your quick take on the G7 and what we can expect in light of Donald Trump's opening foray with the European Union. But then I'd like to pivot to the larger conversation about, you know, the Mark Carney prime minister is not Mark Carney, the candidate, from the counter tariffs secretly being gone to calling Donald Trump transformational to asking to be part of the Golden Dome. Is this good diplomacy or a bait and switch?
No, I think that he's looking for, particularly with the G7 coming up on Canadian soil in a short bit. This is all, I think he's just keeping, he's not saying no to Trump on anything of substance. The transformational comment in the White House, I mean, I think that most Canadians would give him a solid grade on his performance in there, particularly when we saw what he did to Zelensky and as well as the leadership of South Africa just a couple of days ago. So, like, I think that security will be a big thing. I think the Golden Dome and what our European allies think of Canada's participation in the missile defense initiative, and the fact that we're still keeping our options open on that, I think will be a big one. And also, I'll just add, I think Alberta's separation and the idea of us selling our natural resources, particularly oil, and all of that will be something of great interest to the global media on Canadian soil in Alberta.
Yeah, Warren, Brad brought up his performance, and that's, I think, at issue here for me is like, how much of this is a performance? What are this prime minister's values? How does he actually see the world? Mackenzie Gray of Global News put it to him. He said, explain the elbows up when you're the one, your team's calling, wanting to integrate more deeply with their military on the Golden Dome. We find out about the tariffs that were secretly removed during the campaign. Never mind the fact that Danielle Smith was called a traitor for the very same policy that she upheld. But I'm just, he mentioned something in his explanation to Mackenzie Gray when he said, he said, look, everything has changed, and now we are willing to cooperate when we can, but we're not necessarily going to cooperate. And I thought to myself, well, explain then Jean Chretien staying out of the Iraq war. None of that is different. It just happens to be that we're in a different time. So how do you see this? I mean, is it a new Mark Carney that we're seeing?
Well, if you're in a daily campaign, and we are now, your message has to be coherent. Your message has to be understandable. And too often, whether it's on energy or housing or having a budget this year, and now, I mean, like the Golden Dome. So Trump wants to put a Golden Dome over North America to protect us from the extreme threat we're facing from the North Korean Navy, I guess. So, but, Mark Carney said on March the 27th, I checked, our relationship with the United States was over. And less than 2 months later, he's like, hey, let's go for this Golden Dome thing. And it's like, Mark, like, which is it?
Yeah.
Is our relationship with them over or not? So, I think we can put a lot of this down to growing pains, a new government, a new prime minister. But, it actually is having the effect of making us all kind of look back nostalgically on the Justin Trudeau era, or at least messages
I don't know about that.
Clear.
but Kate, and look, I didn't vote for the guy, so I don't feel like I had the wool pulled over my eyes. But there are a lot of people who got very, very heated because they believed in the narrative that the Liberal government was telling them about our relationship being over. And so how are those people feeling today, do you think?
Yeah. This is not growing pains. This is political opportunism. Things changed with the relationship the moment Mark Carney got elected. He turned up the volume on people's anxieties and fears about, the relationship with the U.S., whether or not we would become a 51st state. And don't get me wrong, Donald Trump started that fight.
Yeah.
But Mark Carney certainly didn't back away from it. It was elbows up the whole way until he got in the saddle and said, you know what, this is going to be a little bit more than we can handle. So I can understand why a lot of voters would be feeling a bit betrayed by the way Mark Carney has handled his interactions with the U.S. and the president since the election. I think that he is doing things correctly in terms of, not shutting down the Golden Dome, even though I think it's a crazy idea that will never, ever happen. He's probably going to play the game with Trump. But at the same time, it's a very different Mark Carney than what we saw at the end of March or even April when the election was held.
Yeah, that's the thing. I'm not getting heated over the sort of what he's doing day to day, because by and large, these are things I agree with. I'm just putting myself in the shoes, Brad, of someone who may have voted for him because they felt that there was a cultural and national imperative to do so, only to then see that it's business as usual.
Yeah, well, when it comes to something like this missile defense, Kate's right. This is never going to happen, and it's a crazy idea. It was a crazy idea when George Bush Jr. Put it to Paul Martin 20 plus years ago. But as a negotiating tactic, you don't have to say no to something that's never going to happen. Yeah. You can keep them going and saying, well, we're gonna find out more what he says. That gets Trump excited, and perhaps it's a negotiating tactic to get him onto other things because we haven't said no to something. And we do got to get to our 2% of our GNP to get to our NATO contributions. Yeah. So, as long as the conversation is going, and now he's distracted again, and now he's looking over at the Europeans, and he's slapping on a 50% tariff there. So maybe there is a method to the madness with this guy.
All right. Hey, to all three of you, I say thank you very much. I hope you have a great weekend, and I'll talk to you real soon.